it is interesting what you're saying, that things kept getting worse and worse. And I'm going back to my chicken and the egg scenario because,
Mm-hmm.
and and maybe out of all of the parties, I think that the party that I hold the most fault with is our media, because I think that they really amplify the voices of division and that shaming and censoring. And if you misstep one thing, then it's a snowball's chance with what's going to happen later. And I don't think that helped elevate the conversation in Canada very well. Elected officials then became very hesitant in what they're saying, what they're doing. Then they had to have this polished image, and only one person could speak on behalf of others, because then they're going to say something wrong and immediately everything's wrong. And like, I don't think that helped the conversation. So that's kind of where I fell on, to who I would blame a little bit more. I think everyone's has a little bit, like, why I focused on education with Canadians is because I think we just need to elevate the basic level of conversation in this country. So citizens have a role to play in doing better. Elected officials have a role to play in doing better. The judiciary, I think, has a role to play in doing better, even just being more open and transparent with how their proceedings, so Canadians can follow along. But ultimately, I think a little bit the media didn't help with the shame and blame and amplifying that. As an elected official, did you find that you were like hesitant with how you approach people? Did the media help or hinder, do you feel, in your role to engage?
I would say that the challenge I found with local media, because I find and this is the issue, the very few local media staff that still exist are doing as good of a job as they can covering City Hall. The problem is, when I first started 11 years ago, it was common that there were at least 6 or 7 members of the media from many different platforms, many different outlets rather, sitting in chambers, watching every second of our meeting, watching how we acted, how we behaved, and were able to report on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now what happens is, there will occasionally be, a couple of media members who come into a council chambers to watch what they're doing. Some of them are watching online, but it's at the lunch break where you get 5 or 6 of them will come and do an interview, and then they're gone for the day. And I don't blame them, because those our local media outlets have essentially been just decimated. That there is no local coverage anymore to the extent which we want, which is part of why it's important to engage with other groups and find other ways to connect, because there are people who don't read the local media anymore, or the traditional local media, the Journal and the Sun. I mean, they're owned by the same entity. They're not really different. The radio stations are combined. There's so few actual unique mainstream outlets anymore. I don't have an issue with what they do, because what I've experienced locally is they still ask tough questions, they do their work, but there's only a handful of them. And so that has created this information vacuum in what we do. And I think it reinforces why, as elected representatives, we need to be out even more, because I can't rely on, and I shouldn't rely on, the media to get information out there. I want to make sure we're sharing where we can, but we also have to connect directly. It's why I like to host town halls. But so I would answer your question and say, I didn't have a concern with how local media's been doing their job. It's just there's so few of them now that they can't do the same job that they did 15 years ago, when there was such active coverage about what we did every single day.
Well, I would suggest maybe perhaps they weren't very good at changing with the times either, because I
Mhm.
think
Oh
there
yeah.
is very much a demand, and you see it yourself, I think. But I think that if they're gonna, you know, kind of be partisan, which I think we can say that that's happened. Um, I think that there has been, and there still is, a huge opportunity for legacy media, mainstream media, to do these things, but it seems like they chose not to. And so, again, I'm going to put the blame on that. There's a demand for this information.
Uh-huh.
There's like independent voices without a budget are able to find success and we could talk about misinformation and disinformation and all those things and lies, and I would very much like to. But I think that that's exposing who is credible, who is honest, who is providing entertaining value. But when you're giving an outfit a ton of money and they can't produce quality information, credible information, again, I think it's on them. Like, the demand is still there. So something is missing.